Deforestation or forest clearance is the removal of a forest or stand of trees from land that is then converted to non-forest use. Deforestation can involve conversion of forest land to farms, ranches, or urban use. The most concentrated deforestation occurs in tropical rainforests. About 31% of Earth's land surface is covered by forests at present. This is one-third less than the forest cover before the expansion of agriculture, with half of that loss occurring in the last century. Between 15 million to 18 million hectares of forest, an area the size of Bangladesh, are destroyed every year. On average, 2,400 trees are cut down each minute. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations defines deforestation as the conversion of forest to other land uses. Deforestation and forest area net change are not the same. The latter is the sum of all forest losses, deforestation, and all forest gains, forest expansion, in a given period. Net change, therefore, can be positive or negative, depending on whether gains exceed losses, or vice versa. The removal of trees without sufficient reforestation has resulted in habitat damage, biodiversity loss, and aridity. Deforestation causes extinction, changes to climatic conditions, desertification, and displacement of populations, as observed by current conditions and in the past through the fossil record. Deforestation also reduces biosequestration of atmospheric carbon dioxide, increasing negative feedback cycles contributing to global warming. Global warming also puts increased pressure on communities who seek food security by clearing forests for agricultural use and reducing arable land more generally. Deforested regions typically incur significant other environmental effects such as adverse soil erosion and degradation into wasteland. The resilience of human food systems and their capacity to adapt to future change is linked to biodiversity, including dryland-adapted shrub and tree species that help combat desertification, forest-dwelling insects, bats and bird species that pollinate crops, trees with extensive root systems in mountain ecosystems that prevent soil erosion, and mangrove species that provide resilience against flooding in coastal areas. The FAO estimates that the global forest carbon stock has decreased 0.9% and tree cover 4.2% between 1990 and 2020. The forest carbon stock in Europe increased from 158.7 to 172.4 GT between 1990 and 2020. In North America, the forest carbon stock increased from 136.6 to 140 GT in the same period. However, carbon stock decreased from 94.3 to 80.9 GT in Africa, 45.8 to 41.5 GT in South and Southeast Asia combined, 33.4 to 33.1 GT in Oceania, 5 to 4.1 GT in Central America, and from 161.8 to 144.8 GT in South America. The IPCC states that there is disagreement about whether the global forest is shrinking or not, and quote research indicating that tree cover has increased 7.1% between 1982 and 2016. IPCC also writes, while above-ground biomass carbon stocks are estimated to be declining in the tropics, they are increasing globally due to increasing stocks in temperate and boreal forest. Agricultural expansion continues to be the main driver of deforestation and forest fragmentation and the associated loss of forest biodiversity. 10. Large-scale commercial agriculture accounted for 40% of tropical deforestation between 2000 and 2010, and local subsistence agriculture for another 33%. Trees are cut down for use as building material, timber, or sold as fuel, while cleared land is used as pasture for livestock and agricultural crops. The vast majority of agricultural activity resulting in deforestation is subsidized by government tax revenue. Disregard of ascribed value, lax forest management, and deficient environmental laws are some of the factors that lead to large-scale deforestation. Deforestation in many countries, both naturally occurring and human-induced, is an ongoing issue. Between 2000 and 2012, 2.3 million square kilometers of forests around the world were cut down. Deforestation and forest degradation continue to take place at alarming rates, which contributes significantly to the ongoing loss of biodiversity. Deforestation is more extreme in tropical and subtropical forests in emerging economies. More than half of all plant and land animal species in the world live in tropical forests. 19. As a result of deforestation, only 6.2 million square kilometers remain of the original 16 million square kilometers of tropical rainforest that formerly covered the Earth. More than 3.6 million hectares of virgin tropical forest was lost in 2018. Consumption and production of beef is the primary driver of deforestation in the Amazon, with around 80% of all converted land being used to rear cattle. 91% of Amazon land deforested since 1970 has been converted to cattle ranching. The global annual net loss of trees is estimated to be approximately 10 billion. According to the Global Forest Resources Assessment 2020, the global average annual deforested land in the 2015 to 2020 demi-decade was 10 million hectares, and the average annual forest area net loss in the 2000 to 2010 decade was 4.7 million hectares. The world has lost 178 million hectares of forest since 1990, which is an area about the size of Libya. According to a 2020 study published in Scientific Reports, if deforestation continues at current rates, it can trigger a total or almost total extinction of humanity in the next 20 to 40 years. They conclude that, from a statistical point of view, the probability that our civilization survives itself is less than 10% in the most optimistic scenario. To avoid this collapse, humanity should pass from a civilization dominated by the economy to cultural society that privileges the interest of the ecosystem above the individual interest of its components, but eventually in accordance with the overall communal interest. In 2014, about 40 countries signed the New York Declaration on Forests, a voluntary pledge to halve deforestation by 2020 and end it by 2030. The agreement was not legally binding, however, and some key countries, such as Brazil, China, and Russia, did not sign onto it. As a result, the effort failed, and deforestation increased from 2014 to 2020. In November 2021, 141 countries agreed at the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow. Deforestation is ongoing and is shaping climate and geography. Deforestation is a contributor to global warming and is often cited as one of the major causes of the enhanced greenhouse effect. Recent calculations suggest that carbon dioxide emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, excluding peatland emissions, contribute about 12% of total anthropogenic carbon dioxide emissions, with a range from 6% to 17%. A 2022 study shows annual carbon emissions from tropical deforestation have doubled during the last 2 decades and continue to increase. According to a review, north of 50 degrees north, large-scale deforestation leads to an overall net global cooling, while tropical deforestation leads to substantial warming not just due to CO2 impacts but also due to other biophysical mechanisms. Moreover, it suggests that standing tropical forests help cool the average global temperature by more than 1 degree Celsius. A study suggests logged and structurally degraded tropical forests are carbon sources for at least a decade. Even when recovering, clarification needed, due to larger carbon losses from soil, organic matter, and deadwood, indicating the tropical forest carbon sink may be much smaller than previously estimated, contradicting that recovering logged and degraded tropical forests are net carbon sinks. Deforestation causes carbon dioxide to linger in the atmosphere. As carbon dioxide accrues, it produces a layer in the atmosphere that traps radiation from the sun. The radiation converts to heat, which causes global warming, which is better known as the greenhouse effect. Plants remove carbon in the form of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during the process of photosynthesis, but release some carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere during normal respiration. Only when actively growing can a tree or forest remove carbon, by storing it in plant tissues. Both the decay and the burning of wood release much of this stored carbon back into the atmosphere. Although an accumulation of wood is generally necessary for carbon sequestration, in some forests the network of symbiotic fungi that surround the tree's roots can store a significant amount of carbon, storing it underground even if the tree which supplied it dies and decays, or is harvested and burned. Another way carbon can be sequestered by forests is for the wood to be harvested and turned into long-lived products, with new young trees replacing them. In November 2021, the EU executive outlined a draft law requiring companies to prove that the agricultural commodities beef, wood, palm oil, soy, coffee and cocoa destined for the EU's 450 million consumers were not linked to deforestation. In September 2022, the EU Parliament supported and strengthened the plan from the EU's executive with 453 votes to 57. According to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, Secretariat, the overwhelming direct cause of deforestation is agriculture. Subsistence farming is responsible for 48% of deforestation. Commercial agriculture is responsible for 32%. Logging is responsible for 14%, and fuel wood removals make up 5%. Experts do not agree on whether industrial logging is an important contributor to global deforestation. Some argue that poor people are more likely to clear forest because they have no alternatives, others that the poor lack the ability to pay for the materials and labor needed to clear forest. Other causes of contemporary deforestation may include corruption of government institutions, the inequitable distribution of wealth and power, population growth and overpopulation, and urbanization. Deforestation is ongoing and is shaping climate and geography. Deforestation is a contributor to global warming and is often cited as one of the major causes of the enhanced greenhouse effect. Recent calculations suggest that carbon dioxide emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, excluding peatland emissions, contribute about 12% of total anthropogenic carbon dioxide emissions, with a range from 6% to 17%. A 2022 study shows annual carbon emissions from tropical deforestation have doubled during the last 2 decades and continue to increase. According to a review, north of 50 degrees north, large-scale deforestation leads to an overall net global cooling, while tropical deforestation leads to substantial warming not just due to CO2 impacts but also due to other biophysical mechanisms. Moreover, it suggests that standing tropical forests help cool the average global temperature by more than 1 degree Celsius. A study suggests logged and structurally degraded tropical forests are carbon sources for at least a decade. Even when recovering, clarification needed, due to larger carbon losses from soil, organic matter and deadwood, indicating the tropical forest carbon sink may be much smaller than previously estimated, contradicting that recovering logged and degraded tropical forests are net carbon sinks.